And so what this allows me to do is do this uncontrolled manifold analysis. So let me walk you through that in a figure here. So what I have here is the length, the duration of the swing part, okay, and the duration of the wind-up part, okay, and you have it in seconds. On the black line are all combinations of those two things that add up to 0.6 seconds, okay, so that we get the bat to the ball at the right time, okay. So 0.36 and 0.24 add up to 0.6, okay. When we define an action like that, we can talk about two different types of variability, okay. What's called orthogonal or bad variability, okay. It's variability in my movement that's taking me away from my performance goal. Okay, so imagine if I start here with the swing and the wind-up both at 0.3 seconds. If I change them to being both 0.32 seconds, right, now I'm too late, right? It adds up to 0.64, right? I didn't get the bat there in time. So moving that direction is bad, you're going to be too late. Moving this direction is bad, you're going to be too slow, okay? So you want to avoid that. But moving along this line, okay, changing from 0.3 to 0.32, 0.28, right? This is probably the best term to describe it is potentially good variability, right? It's something that you can change about the action without affecting the performance outcome, right? So without affecting the timing outcome. And this is called, variability used along the uncontrolled manifold. So potentially, we could use this flexibility to adapt or to do other things. Okay? So this is what I did, and I looked for this in a study from the training study we did. And this was a training study, as I said, I published it last year. We compared people training in the virtual environment with people that trained in real batting. The key part of the virtual environment was there was adaptive training. So what we did was, as the batter hit, as they got better and better, we increased the range of pitch speeds, we increased the range of pitch locations, we made more pitch types, okay? So it got, the variability in conditions got larger and larger. And just to give you a nutshell of this, what this study actually took me 10 years to conduct, because what we did was we trained a group of high school players, measured their performance in their senior year, then followed them for the next 5 years to see where they ended up in terms of professional baseball. And the VR training was shown, we got evidence of good transfer. But let's look at what happened with this variability. Okay? So here's what we found if you look at week 2, so early in the training. Here's our figure. Each of these points represents a swing from one batter. Okay? I've done this for all the batters, but I'm just going to show you some examples. This is really, really new thing that I've done. So here's our manifold line, okay? What you can see is we have a scatter of variability that's really equal in both directions. So there's as much variability going off the manifold as along it, okay? So it's pretty even. I want you to note up here, here's the endpoint variability is 0.044 seconds. So that's kind of the time variability. Now let's look what happens after 4 more weeks of training, okay? This training where they're being forced to adapt to these variable conditions, okay? What we see now is this, right? A completely different story. Now we have a lot more, we actually have very much big reduction in the variability off the manifold, the bad, quote-unquote bad variability, and an even larger increase in the variability along it, okay? So, and I'll emphasize the endpoint. This is the story I was trying to emphasize at the start, right? Look at the endpoint variability. It was 0.025, okay? 0.044, right? So I get the classic effect that they're more consistent in the performance outcome, but it's certainly not due to the fact they're becoming they're perfectly more consistent in the swing, right? They're varying something about the swing, okay? And so what's going on here? Well, there's a couple different things. One is I think it's an example, perhaps, and you'll have to do some more of a coordinated structure, or sometimes what we call a motor synergy, right? Because letting yourself move along this line allows you to, it just kind of having overall control of timing instead of controlling these two things independently, allows a batter you know, if I'm slightly late with my leg kick, okay, I can make up for it by having a faster swing, right? That's motor synergy. One of the components of my movement is offsetting, you know, being complementing the other, okay? So we have this synergy. The other thing, obviously, it lets the batter do is adapt to the constraints of the practice conditions, right? If you're going to hit faster pitches, lower, higher pitches, different types, you're probably going to have to adjust the timing of your swing a lot. Okay? So I think that's you know, kind of what's going on here. So this is very preliminary. As I mentioned, this is looking at this data, but seeing this kind of movement variability allows us to potentially adapt to task constraints, okay? The wider range of conditions. I didn't show it here, but we'll also see evidence of adaptation to individual constraints. So what we do is we measure for each batter the maximum back speed they can produce. What you find is that's strongly related to the length of their leg kick, the wind-up, right? If your bat's a little bit slower, you don't want a really long wind-up, right? So there seems to be some adaptation there, okay? So I think there's some initial evidence of this idea of good variability, this variability that's not taking you away from your performance goals, okay? There's still a lot of work to do here. Carl has done some work as well, showing that this doesn't always be the case, right? Sometimes when you get lots of this variability, it's not so good, especially when it's too big. So I think there's a lot of interesting things to do here, but I think it's an interesting potential way to quantify this good versus bad variability and what you're looking for. So we want, if we want variability, we kind of know what we're looking for maybe, in good versus bad. How do we get it? Okay, and as I said, this is probably the question people are most interested in. How do you get functional variability in practice through using different coaching and instructional methods? And this is something that I've tried to do recently. There's not a lot of research out there that has directly compared different coaching methods. Within certain things like internal versus external instructions, there's a lot, but not across big things. So I'm starting to try to tackle this. And what you can do with this is you can look at kind of some basic coaching methods and techniques and practice techniques and see where they fall along the movement variability continuum. Okay, so if we do that, so this is just kind of a rough plot here. This is the amount of movement variability you expect, okay? And this is several different types of ways to organize practice, okay? Right at the bottom, obviously, you have blocked repetition, right? If I'm going to force you to do the same movement, the ideal movement over and over again, your movement variability is, by definition, going to be low. Internal focus of attention cueing. In most cases, if I'm going to tell you how to move, by telling you what your body should be doing, I'm probably going to get low movement variability. Then as you move up this continuum, you get into ones that are more designed to encourage it. Okay? External focus of attention, where you're telling the person what movement effect should occur, not what they should move. And then we have the ones that I'm going to talk about in a second, the constraints-led approach, which is built on the constraints model. Okay? The idea that you somehow manipulate things Carl was talking about, the tasks, the rules, the environment, to try to encourage a certain solution. Okay? Obviously that's going to have some variability. And the most extreme one that I found in this category is differential learning. Okay? And if you don't know what differential learning is where it's different than constraints-led approach, because what you do is you actually kind of force the performer to go through a wide range of different conditions, okay, movement conditions. So a typical differential learning task, and this is from a person named Schulhorn, if you've ever heard it. What you do is you have a person practice from a wide range of different body starting positions that you prescribe. Okay, so you tell them, on this time I want you to put your right foot back and have your left arm forward. Next one I want this, right? Next one. So you're prescribing the initial body position so that they have to experience them all. And the idea is that you hope that through forcing them to experience them all, they'll find a good solution. Okay. The example, the way that I often analogy I use for the difference between these is a buffet. Okay. The constraints-led approach, if you're eating a buffet, would be like you're only allowed to eat from the section with the vegetables, right? So I'm not telling you what to eat, but I'm telling you have to eat in this range. So you're probably going to be exploring there. Differential learning is telling you have to try the carrots, you have to try the, so it's telling you have to do all of them. Okay, so that's kind of the difference. So these are the different methods. Kind of which ones are the best for getting this functional good variability. Before I dive into that, I would actually like to kind of mention something that I would like to kind of see the field move to and kind of coaches move to, is something that has been proposed by Tim Buzzard and Damien Farrow from Australia Institute of Sport, is the idea that it's time to start moving away from these categories of describing how we manipulate variability in practice. If you look at the research on blocked versus random, for example, every single study will have a different definition of what blocked means. Does it mean 10 trials? Does it mean 15? Is random 1 trial or 2? Right? So what Tim and Damien propose is let's get rid of those broad labels and just actually measure it, right? So they came up with a metric that quantifies between and within skilled variability. What you do is basically write down the set of practice conditions you put your athlete through. So this was in tennis, so I had to make a serve to the deuce side, then I had to do 4 in a row, then they did a backhand, so on and so forth. And you just take this and you can calculate a number that represents the amount of variability. Instead of trying to say, this is blocked, is this blocked, or is it serial, or is it random? Let's just put a number to it. So I think that's a really valuable new way to look at it. And I've started to do that as well. But let's return to the question of which of the instructional methods are good for promoting functional variability. Okay? So I want to tell you about 2 studies I've done. Okay? The first one is looking at cueing manipulations versus constraints manipulations. Okay? And this is one that's actually coming out really soon. I actually just got the email with the proofs while I was sitting in here this morning. So it should be out really soon. What we did in this study, and this is a good point back to Carl's talk as well. In the study we do as well, we're not teaching people completely new skills, right? We're usually doing some sort of modification to their technique or trying to just enhance their technique, but we're not really teaching completely new things. And this study was a definite example. What we did in this study was to try to get into what in baseball now is called the fly ball revolution. Okay? And if you know anything about baseball, if you don't, that recently there's been kind of this movement that several players have adopted this strategy and been very successful to try to deliberately hit the ball in the air more instead of hit fly balls. There's lots of different reasons for wanting to do this. The defenses are better. There's some evidence the ball's kind of been juiced so it travels farther. But the key point is this goes against what most kids are taught when they play Little League. In Little League, you're taught to put the ball in play. Swing down at the ball, hit it on the ground, make the defense play it. So this kind of transition to trying to get it in the air is a bit of a challenge. So what we wanted to do is look at the best way to do this and also look at this issue of variability, how does it relate to variability. So what we're talking about here in baseball vernacular is what we're trying to do is get the batter to increase the launch angle of the ball off their bat. Okay, so a launch angle of 0 is straight, what's called a line drive. A launch angle negative is a ground ball. We want it up here. This is offensive statistics showing you this is the optimal place to hit a ball. Okay? So to do this, what we did was we compared 3 training groups in the simulator. Okay? We had an internal focus of attention group. Okay? So what I did was I went out and interviewed a handful of coaches and asked them, if you were training a batter, you're going to try to get more fly balls, what would you tell them? What instructions would you give them? And picked out ones that refer to the body, right? That's what an internal focus of the definition of an internal focus of attention. So get your hands under the ball, move your arms at an upward angle, drive up off your back foot. Okay? So those are the 3 cues that we use for the batters in that group. The external focus of attention in the group, they did the same thing, interviewed coaches. So I really wanted to get cues that might actually be used. I'll talk about that in a second. There's still an issue with that, rather than making up my own. But I did the same thing, but now I picked out ones that external focus attention cue refers to the effect your movement has on the environment. Okay? Whether it's the ground, actually the effect it has on your clothes, any equipment you're holding. So here, whoops, you can see what we're talking about. There's no reference to your body. We're talking about the bat, the ball, the pitch, right? So those are external focus of attention cues. So this group, for both of these, this was a 6-week training study. This group kept getting these cues and practiced hitting fly balls in the simulator. The constraints group, what we did with the constraints group is we created a task constraint that I know some major league teams are already using in real hitting, is to put a barrier across the field. Okay? So basically it was a virtual fence